Okay, the next thing we're going to do is download and install Agency. And actually, we've already downloaded it, but now we're going to install the Agency child theme. And installing a child theme is exactly the same thing as installing a regular theme. So we just come back over to Appearance and Themes and install themes and upload and choose our file. And now we just select Agency and install it. Activate Agency. And now if we come over and refresh our site, you're going to see it's changed quite a bit. Okay, it's got the familiar black and white. Right now it's got the big text up here, and it's laid out, like this. Now I want to come back and take a look at the theme settings for this, because the theme settings have in fact changed, although they're very similar. What's happened here in this set of the theme settings is now you have this color style setting, right, where you can select the color that you want to use for the setting for special or specific things on the site. So if we select red, come over here and refresh this, you're going to see our links change this red color, so on and so forth. But notably, one of the things that's missing from this now was that header selection. Right? You had that header selection where you could select an image or you could select dynamic text. The Agency theme doesn't give you that choice in this way. We will be able to install or add a logo image, and of course that's what this is right here, right? This isn't the site title and tagline. This is in fact a logo image, and we will be able to add that logo image to the site. But the setting that you saw in this theme settings doesn't exist in this case. What Agency does is it defaults to the dynamic text unless you use the WordPress system for installing a logo image. And I'll go into that when we get to that part. Don't believe it's next week, but the week after. Now if we come over to the SEO settings, they are identical. There aren't really any changes to the SEO settings. And the import-export is also exactly the same. However, the README file has more detail to it than the version of it without Agency. And one of the things about these small business appropriate themes is they have static front pages. And so there are generally instructions for how to use that static front page here, even though they are sort of hidden. And I'm going to have to point it out to you as we set up the front page. But before I do that, actually, you'll see some hints for those things here in this README, though. Another thing that you're going to see hints for is this featured images. Now, one of the things about these Genesis themes is that you don't really make decisions about the main images, about the sizes of the main images that you're going to use if you're using a Genesis child theme, because those size decisions are made for you. And so it's important to understand the two images sizes that are critical in Genesis. The first one is this home featured image. Now, this is actually wrong. Right? It's purporting to tell you it, but in fact it's not accurate. It's not called home bottom. That's not the name of the featured image. It's actually called home feature. It's not 280 by 150. It's actually 280 by 100. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about the image sizes that you're going to be using. This is a pre-designed or predefined image size, and when you insert an image into this widget, you're going to have the choice of selecting one of those predefined image sizes, and this home feature image size is this 280 by 100. The second image size is the slider image. And now the slider image is defined as 300 pixels tall and 950 pixels wide. So that's sort of the default thing to keep in mind, or the default image size to keep in mind is 300 pixels tall, 950 pixels wide. Now, this responsive slider actually gives you the opportunity to keep the width, the height at 300 pixels, but to make it narrower so that you have room for text here instead. And so this is an option. And so it doesn't actually have to be 950 pixels long as you are using text from the page beside the image. And when we get to installing this, I'll tell you all about that. But if you're not familiar with how Genesis child themes work, you may not realize how critical it is that your image sizes match the image sizes that they provide or that they specify. And so the two sizes that you need to keep in mind in this case are your home feature, which is 280 by 100, and your slider, which is 300 pixels tall and anywhere up to 950 pixels wide. Okay, something else that is unusual about Genesis child themes, and if you've never done this before, and if you're just starting out, this won't strike you as unusual, but if you've been around WordPress for a while, it will strike you as unusual. And that is that these Genesis child themes, while they produce a static front page, they don't actually use a static front page in your reading settings. So in an ordinary WordPress website, like this thesis site, this front page or this home page is a static front page. And we set that static front page in the reading settings. And so if we just go over and look at the site for a second, sort of the typical thing to do in WordPress land is, if you don't want your front page to be a blog, you come over here to Settings and Reading, and then you say front page displays a static page, and then you pick your page, and then you also pick the page that you want your posts to be displayed on. And that's how it usually works in WordPress. However, in Genesis it doesn't work that way. And in Genesis what they do, I think Genesis assumes, I don't know what Genesis assumes, but I think what they assume is that confuses people. And so rather than making people make that choice, they make that choice for you. And if you go make the choice yourself, it's going to make it not work properly. And I discovered that myself when I went to set up this child theme without reading any directions and just diving right on in, because that's the kind of guy I am. And I couldn't get my front page to look right. And it's because I did, in fact, go into here, into Settings and Reading, and then I said my front page displays a static page, and I selected the static page, and that meant that the front page didn't actually work right, because the way Genesis does this is by default the front page still displays the blog posts unless you add content to the home page widget areas. So if you look at this README text here, it's got this little description of widget areas: the home welcome, the home slider, home left, home middle, home right. As soon as you put some content in one of those widget areas, this page stops displaying the blog page or blog posts and starts displaying the static front page without ever having to set that setting in reading settings. Now we're going to talk about, because I'm assuming that some people watching this don't know what widgets are and don't know what sidebars are or widget areas and don't understand plugins and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And so don't worry about that. We're going to talk about that when we get to it. But for people who are coming to Genesis with some experience in WordPress, this will have a way of catching you up if you don't realize that that's how it works. Because the fundamental difference between this page as it is right now and the page as it looks here, here, is that this page has content placed inside of those widget areas. So as soon as you put the content in the widget area, it goes from this to something like this. And that's the critical thing about setting up a business style child theme in Genesis, is that you don't set it up in reading settings, you just add content to the widget areas, and once you do that, it becomes a static front page. Okay, so that's all of the material that we're going to cover this evening. We have sort of a broad understanding of what we're going to do and what Genesis is capable of. And we've installed Genesis and the agency child theme. Now I want to take questions.